So, I can thankfully say that I'm healthy and my family's healthy, and we're dealing with the quarantine and the impacts of the mental impacts successfully. We're trying to deal with homeschooling like many other parents. So dealing through that, kind of well. I have to say it's kind of getting a bit frustrating that the days seem to blend into each other, but I shan't complain because I have my health and I have a job, which isn't always true of many Americans today. So let me start there. In terms of the organizational impact and the business impact, it's been large. We're an alcohol beverage industry, and 20% of our industry was shut with the on-premise closures, restaurants, bars, etc. So that happened in kind of mid-March. So we lost around 21% of our industry overnight. And then we dealt with the massive flip of the volume and the consumer behavior into grocery stores, which sent a massive bullwhip through our supply chain, because we went from selling kegs to, selling 30 packs of 12 ounce only. And then we saw, grocery stores change their policies and procedures. So it's been pretty difficult to manage through the process, both at a kind of channel mix as well as an operational supply chain situation. I think as an organization, we were very early in mid-March to set forth in three kind of projects or work streams. First, we established a people health and safety work stream to ensure that everyone in our organization was as best we could looked after from the health and safety perspective. We shut offices. We went to work from home exclusively. We socially distanced everyone, and we continued to monitor the health and safety. The second thing we did was an immediate action plan. What is happening immediately day to day. We're monitoring sales on a daily basis. We're reforecasting the business literally weekly, and working with our supply partners to keep it up. And then third work stream we established was our back to work process. How would we and when would we reestablish people going back into the market? How can we do that safely? What's the changes in the environment and marketplace, as we see places reopen? This has been very dynamic as well. We've seen certain states open before others, certain policy changes. So we had to be very agile and localized in our decision making. So we set principles, and we've allowed local salespeople and managers to make decisions on an on-ground basis. We now expect for the next 7-8 months that the situation remains pretty fluid, dynamic, but we are finding some level of consistency in terms of performance, which is making our business more predictable. It's predictably tough, but at least it's predictable.
Mm-hmm. And is this kind of forcing your team and yourself to think about or rethink certain things? So that could be, safety procedures, supply procedures, and processes. You've kind of talked a little bit about it, but is there certain things you're looking at a little more than others now?
Yeah, I think we've evaluated all the actions of the employee and reset, expectations and standards. So, with office-based employees, we remain work from home. That is completely different, So the way we operate from an office-based employee is totally different. Zoom calls versus in-person meetings. We haven't allowed offices to reopen yet. We will eventually, in the next few weeks, begin a trickle and a roster system with offices. So the way we physically work on an office base is vastly different. Mm-hmm. And then our people who are visiting stores have had completely reassessed the way they visit stores, from PPE management to the amount of calls they can make per day has reduced dramatically. How they interact with store managers is different. Sales calls are much quicker. We've had to do distributor and retailer meetings via Zoom, not in person. We've also had to deal with how distributors get their product to store. They've limited their store delivery days to 4. They're changing their policies in terms of how they deal with us. So yeah, there's a complete reassessment, and we've had to issue totally new guidelines of how we work. So it feels like everything changed, and nothing. There is no new normal. It is the new reality, right? There's nothing normal about the way we have to operate today.
Mm-hmm. And Luke, welcome. Glad to have you here as well.
Sorry, I was late. Just in back-to-backs all day.
No, no, totally get it. Totally get it. Thank you for coming. We were just kind of getting into some of the business procedures that have changed, whether that be from a safety lens and operational
Yeah.
lens. And as your company starts to get ready for, possible reopening in Los Angeles and elsewhere, how things have changed. So, but I know that Matt has talked briefly about consumption habits changing. I think that's an interesting conversation. So is there things that you're seeing in consumers that are changing, whether it be, less frequent trips to grocery stores or shopping in different channels, whether it be bulk buying? Is there things that you're looking out for or you've seen recently with consumers?
Oh, do you want me to take it? I'll go and take this one. Yes, and I would say that a lot of it initially was kind of maybe what you would have logically expected. So some of the things you put there, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
Buying bulk packs in grocery stores, reduction of number of shopping missions, but very heavy up in terms of the weight of purchase on those decisions. People going back to trusted brands, a lot of the things that we would have expected. But it has been then, I think probably one of the anomalies that we've seen is that there's actually been a lot of trade up within BevAlc, and certainly, we pay particularly close attention to beer, cider, and FMB.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, the below premium category is the worst performing category. Craft import are doing very well, and they have a higher PTC, price to consumer. But it's FMB with flavored malt beverage, which includes, of course, seltzers, White Claw being the poster child. It are absolutely flying off the shelf to the point where I believe some businesses are really struggling to fulfill demand. And there's a bit of that going across the board, frankly, mostly pertaining to 12-ounce cans, but particularly, and so seltzer is significantly more expensive than a beer, but it's still flying. I think the last Nielsen data we saw was around 120% growth year on
And why
year.
do you think that is? Like, obviously, seltzer is very popular right now. Is there something about it that's attractive to consumers?
Yeah, so first up, it was already in very, very aggressive growth, but like plus 60s maybe, was probably some of the best numbers in terms of year on year growth. So it's almost doubled. We'd be surmising, so we don't have like actual maybe reasons why, but and Matt, I welcome your builds on this as well. One of the major drivers is going to be that first up, the majority of sales of FMBs, in particular seltzers, came through the off trade, not the on trade. So most people go into bars and then they're not drinking seltzers, although increasingly they were becoming available. So it was already, I guess, kind of advantaged in store and in people's minds as something that you would go to the store and buy. It then more broadly tends to get consumed in more higher energy occasions, and those occasions tend to over-index more in the on-trade than they do in the off-trade. People are going to be likely to be buying beer and drinks for probably slightly more subdued occasions. Now, obviously, those high energy occasions have gone, in the on trade, and so people have taken them as best they can, I think, into the home. And as they've done that, they've decided to prefer to drink FMBs and seltzers, and that has driven a huge acceleration. There's I think probably some health and wellness stuff going in there as well. People are staying at home. Maybe, there's a lot that we're seeing about people, maybe their at-home consumption has increased, even though that maybe hasn't completely accounted for their decline in on-trade volume and the lower calorie content and the overall kind of improved, less bad for you perceptions that sit around seltzers have also I think made the increased consumption of that category feel more permissible.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything your team's doing on ensuring you can service demand? So, for example, like I work at the Clorox company full time. Supply and is catching up to supply and what demand currently is a challenge. As an essential business yourselves, like, is there things that you're doing to speed up production on your end?
Matt, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, look, much like Clorox, I'm sure beer is a pretty complex product to make, and it has a certain manufacturing footprint.
Of course, yeah.
You just can't go and make co-packing, and just any facility can't make it. It's a regulated product. It has a production process that's pretty unique.
Mm-hmm.
Line time can be changed, so you kind of move things around. Prioritization. What's happening at the moment is a lot of trading off between brands. So we're doing a lot of solidification and kind of consolidation behind more profitable brands and the dilution of weaker brands. So what you're seeing is a lot of volume being pushed into higher margin, and a lot of lower margin brands are getting whacked pretty aggressively. So you can fulfill 90% of your good brands and probably 40% of your crap brands, right? So there's a lot of trade-offs been going on inside the existing supply sites. There's a lot of, how do you access more physical inventory in terms of 12-ounce cans? So there's a lot of horse trading going on there. And there's a lot of time being spent on the supply sites to allocate and kind of get more efficient. Now, there was a lot of available capacity inside the existing beer system, so we're using more and more of that. So there's a bunch of workarounds going on inside the supply side, but probably pretty consistent with many other categories that are going through unprecedented
Of course.
and really volatile demand change. It's not longitudinal demand change. It was like 1 week it was X, next week it was Y. And that volatility, kind of creates a ripple or a bullwhip through the entire supply side. So everything is slowly catching up to that initial volatile shift.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just more curious on this. So, like, I know we're probably only 9-10 weeks into the whole situation, so it's hard to like take away many things from how consumer habits are changing. But socialization is changing, right? So a lot of your business, I'm assuming, is bringing people together for occasions, and there's a social aspect to it. Are you seeing in-home usage going up a little bit more recently with everyone at home? And is there like is there a future? Like, how do you see socialization moving forward? I think that's an interesting topic to talk about.
Yeah, this is a bonus. This Luke and I are going to have a big fight about this. No, we're have a fight. The biggest debate is, are we temporarily impacting, or are we creating a systematic and seismic shift in the ongoing behavior of people, right? I tell you what, the states that have reopened, people are rushing to get back to what they were doing, right? We're seeing on-premises reopen and people stay out till 2 a.m. I do think there'll be some midterm ongoing behavioral shifts, right? Until we have treatment and vaccine in place. I do think there'll be a cautiousness amongst certain populations that will change their midterm behavior. Boomers, kind of Gen Xers, whereas Gen Zs and millennials probably, we're already seeing indicative data that they don't give a crap, and they're going to go back to bars more frequently than boomers, right? So I think we see midterm increased at-home socialization in the comfort and protection of our homes, where we invite, closer friends over for a socialization experience, where we enjoy food and consume alcohol. I think that increases at-home consumption, certainly increases. We're seeing that in the data. But I do think that there is fervor and desire to reignite our more kind of higher energy experiences back in bars and clubs. I think it's just a hunch, that restaurants will be more affected than bars, because that experience of serving, eating food and sitting down in a almost hospital-like environment will feel very poor. Whereas, going to an open air bar and just drinking a few, cold PBRs on draft doesn't feel like I've really ruined the experience, right? Whereas, going to a high-end restaurant paying, $200 a head for food, but I'm doing it with masks and, I can't talk to anyone, and my waiter serves me in PPE, feels like it's a really expensive experience, but sub-quality. So I think there'll be changes in the midterm. Honestly, though, I think over the long term, I'm not sure how seismic the shifts are, because I think there'll be an ongoing desire to return to the experiences of the past. So that's a hunch at the moment. That's my hunch at the moment. But Luke and I will probably have every day a debate around, who's right and who's wrong, and we'll both be wrong, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think in this instance, I'd probably mostly agree with Matt that, were there significant unmet needs or issues with the way that people socialized before COVID, that this disruption now gives people the opportunity to solve post-COVID? And I'm not sure the answer to that question is yes, really. I don't think people were deeply dissatisfied with the options and avails that they had to them. So people are, I think, missing what they had and are wanting to return to it. But there will be those mitigating factors. What I think probably one of the things that certainly in my world people have been talking about that they've missed the most is close friends and family, and spending time with them, and maybe less pining for that big night out where I hung out with 50 randoms and went on some crazy adventure. Like, sure, okay, miss a bit of that. But when push comes to shove, to Matt's point about spending time with trusted friends and family, I think that's what people have really missed the most and what people are going to treasure the most. And I think so there's nostalgia for that, and people will be looking to recapture that, and I think we'll maybe reprioritize those experiences over some of the other kind of the wilder stuff. And that I think will also intersect with some of the industry challenges that we'll face around larger venues, the types of places and spaces that were designed to serve big throngs of people getting up close and personal. Well, maybe people don't want to do that so much anymore, don't feel so comfortable doing it, and also wasn't really the number one thing that they missed. Whereas the types of spaces and places that helped you have a more intimate experience and helped you elevate that experience with people that you know, love and trust are probably going to be the things that people want to have more of in their lives, and that the industry will be able to fulfill.
I think that's no, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think the socialization piece that we spoke about, that's clear. I do think the shopping or buying behavior that we talk about, there wasn't a great deal of systematic problems in socialization pre-COVID. I tell you what, there was a problem with alcohol was e-commerce and delivery. And we've seen just an extraordinary explosion of people willing to participate in alcohol delivery. And I think that sticks. And I think that'll be true across a lot of the, kind of grocery sectors, which is people are becoming adapted to using, delivery services and that will be an ingrained behavior, because they've come to realize just how convenient, having Drizzly deliver your booze in an hour and a half is, right? Versus kind of only having to go to the shop. So I think there is some shopping behavior that'll shift with e-com being radically improved. The other thing I think, which will be unbelievably exciting, is to watch next wave fresh entrepreneurs come in and reignite the on-premise, because a lot of bars will go broke, right? They won't reopen. Oh, okay. So what falls in it? And when something falls over, something grows in its place, right? So, okay. So what happens next in bars is they shut down. and it's better to drink outside than inside because you got more space and light and stuff. Well, do we end up having a massive explosion of like outdoor kind of picnic style venues that entrepreneurs set up with the licenses of those places that went broke? Mm-hmm. So I'm super excited to see the entrepreneurial spirit of America come through as people pick up the pieces of the industry. So that kind of gives me real hope. We're already starting to see a bunch of bars in Florida and Georgia, etc., take advantage of the capacity limit improvement. If you're outdoor versus indoor, you can have your patio full, but you can't have your bar, 25%. So we're already starting to see entrepreneurs and bar owners shift their behavior in those ways. So I'm just excited to see what emerges in that industry.
It's very interesting you say that, because I feel like, opportunities are arising. Sure, there's a lot of challenges, but this represents an opportunity for many companies, many entrepreneurs to really spark and ignite businesses that they're working on. And I think
100%.
Yeah.
Look, what is the old quote? The Chinese symbol for crisis and opportunity is the same symbol, right? It's a two-edged sword. It's horrible to watch 40 million people become unemployed. It's devastating, right? But if you kind of follow anything in American history, there'll be a way. That will put people back to work in different ways. Things will emerge. Industries that didn't exist will exist. I mean, who would have thought the mask industry might be the fastest growing industry in America for the next 2 years, right? We'll see invention and creation flourish as we move forward. So it's devastating. It's horrible. It's going to be difficult economically, but what will arise will be also pretty amazing.
So Matt, just to follow up on that, like creativity, innovation, it's at the forefront of what you guys do. Like obviously hard coffee you launched recently, whiskey, hard seltzer, and I think IPA in the last 6 months. So is there, an opportunity for you guys to either look at new categories or to use this as a way to drive innovation forward a little bit more in the coming years?
Yeah. We're already pursuing a very aggressive and progressive innovation agenda from a 176-year-old brand in Bachelor Ribbon, which has principally been the one beer for 50 years. 2 years ago, we already kind of established that we're becoming an enhanced drinks brand that created beverages for every next generation. So we're already kind of at a visionary level, prepared to adapt to the changing times. As we move forward, as socialization changes a little, as things adapt a little bit, we'll be very open-minded to what we do next, because that is now our charter as a brand at perhaps at the PBR brand level. We're not fixated on singular old school beer. We're very much in the kind of moving forward. So yeah, it'll kind of continue to spur our innovation, drive us forward in terms of what we want to create. Both at a liquid level, packaging format level, all that sort of stuff we'll continue to look at. There's a couple of questions in the chat line. Do you want to hit those?
So do you think there will be new types of venues post-pandemic? So that's interesting.
Yes.
Did you want to touch upon that?
Yes, ones with air and sunlight.
Yeah, patios basically. I love it.
Oh, look, I think anything outdoors is going to be hot. Picnics, grass fields, 6 foot from everyone, sunlight, beer, drinks. Yeah, I think we're going to be less inclined to go down a dark set of staircases into a black room, into a cramped space, and much more inclined to go stand on the outside and share a beer with a friend, right? So I think there'll be big shifts. What was really interesting, here's a really interesting point. We theorized, this is so interesting. In late March, when everything was shut down, we assumed that the on-premise would come back in package form, right? People won't want to touch glassware. They won't want to draft beer because they'll fear its safety, right? Well, the exact opposite is true. 8 weeks into stuck at home drinking beer out of a bottle or a can has meant that anyone that goes back out wants a nice cold draft beer, because that's the experience, right? So we're learning a lot about what makes a great social experience. So I think bars and venues will work out what really enhances people's socialization experience and lean into it, So yeah, I do think there'll be significant shifts in the venue models. I mean, Luke mentioned it earlier, large scale music venues, 20,000 people in stadiums, 5,000 people in amphitheaters. That what happens there? What does Live Nation do? Do they put a series of live events on in parks where they can spread us out 6 feet? They all have to rethink. I mean, they all have to rethink exactly how they want to bring back their businesses and bring people together in a way that makes us feel comfortable. So yeah, I think it'll be a radical shift.
Yeah, I mean, you might see. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just like building on that surprise, I guess we had about draft. It maybe points towards an insight around how now what people are not going to want is a home away from home. They're going to want something that is not home at home. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't. That raises really interesting questions for coffee shops as well. Outside of our industry, which kind of built there. Well, we'll make you feel like you're at. Well, maybe that isn't what people want anymore. Like, make me feel like I've got out of the pen that I've been locked inside for some time. The other is that there's going to be, what does that experience look like? And then who cracks the code on how to commercialize that most effectively? Because it's going to be obviously really, really hard to have, your productivity per square foot starts to decrease significantly, right? So I think the organizations, the small companies, whoever that come up with a way to properly commercialize that, offer people value that maybe they're prepared to spend significantly more on than they were previously, might be the people that come out winning.
Yeah.
Hey, Luke, do you reckon, like, I mean, do you think that this might be a great opportunity in a way for marketing? Like, I think, a lot of brands consider, I wouldn't say we're in a recession yet, but like a recessionary period or a challenging period as a time to invest in their brands, especially brands with high heritage values or strong equity with consumers, right? So I know that you guys are recently going to be launching, or you have launched, your Grabs to Pabst campaign, which is your biggest campaign to date. So can you share with me a little bit about the details of that and what you hope to get out of it?
Sure. So first, I guess the first part of your question is, do I think it's a good time to invest? I think it's a good time for us to invest. I don't want to comment more broadly, but certainly there is a lot of literature out there that suggests that the businesses that invest during recessions are the one that disproportionately win over the longer term. There are disruptions in consumer behaviors. There is value to be grabbed out there in the market for the bold that are prepared to get after it. We felt like for our business, we've got a very strong brand that can get a little bit forgotten about. And we want to unlock the power of that brand as aggressively as we can. This is a time where behaviors are changing. And people do seem to be preferring trusted brands that have history and heritage. So there are some advantages there for us to capitalize on. And also, frankly, we're looking to support our innovations to drive ourselves to be that enhanced beverage business, to drive that proliferation, diversification. And we want to do that right now. Like, we're seeing those behaviors changing, like those earlier points I was making around FMBs, seeing that explosion. We absolutely believe that we can be participating and adding value to that category. We want to get after that right now and be a brand that's part of the future. That's from an advertising point of view. We also do a lot of work in kind of local area marketing, and to a lot of our conversations about socializing changing right now. I think the brands that decide to sit back and watch could lose out, right? Because you're just not going to participate in building what the new, avoid that word new normal, but participate in what 2021 and beyond looks like. I think we as best we can need to get out there and help be the people that create this, whatever is this new world. let's make ourselves part of it, and let's help drive and create stuff that people want to have more of in their lives, rather than sit back and let other people do it. Because I think that if we did do that, we'll get left behind. If we do that now and we get out ahead of it, then we can, continue to be a cherished brand for another 175 years.
Great. I mean, we're almost running out of time, but I'd love to ask just one more question if we can. For the both of you, what does the future of Pabst Brewing Company look like? You can be in the next couple of years or in the next 5 years.
It's a pretty broad question, brother. Look, we get the chance to steward. This is a 176-year-old company. We get to steward it into the next 176 years. So, the next, your tenure as a leader in an organization runs between 2 and 10 years, depending on what's going on. So you have a brief moment in history to steward a company forward. I think what's important is that we don't rest on the laurels of the legacy of the company, but we continue to progress it, change it, evolve it, and be dynamic based on the changing market conditions. So I'm hopeful that when my tenure's over, that the reflection is that Pabst embraced change through periods of change and became a stronger, better business that had kind of a future, and did some good things during my tenure. I do think that the direction we set for the organization, a year and a half ago, is still true. We established a progressive and innovative agenda 18 months ago, and nothing says that wasn't a good choice. And in fact, with the COVID virus, it even suggests that being innovative and progressive and dynamic is even more important, because it enables you to accept and lean into change. Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful that we evolved from the hipster beer brand that was kind of cool in 2005 to be the modern day enhanced drinks brand of every next generation. And we sort of unshackle that retro nostalgia thing, and we stand as a voice of the future. And we have some fun doing it, right? We sell beer, we sell seltzer, we sell whiskey. We sell stuff that kind of takes you to a physiological place of fun, and we're going to keep doing that. And Grabs to Pabst campaign is exactly that, right? It's stupid, ridiculous, old cliched, kind of jingles interspersed with modern day kind of creativity. It's that kind of fun, familiar vibe that we're looking for. Outside of PBR, though, we have other brands. We have Lone Star, Rainier, Stroh, and many other classic American brands, and we want what we've been able to do and we are doing with PBR to be kind of on these other brands as well. We owe them the chance to succeed in the future as well. So I'm pretty optimistic about where we're going as a business, where we've been the last few months, and I think we'll survive through COVID through being sensible. What I will comment on is an investment, the investment thing that Luke mentioned. I think it's really, you got to be really, really choiceful at the moment in terms of investments, reducing non-essential, kind of investments and nice to haves, and channeling money into must-dos. And I think that's what we've done in the last 7 or 8 weeks. We've had to take some pretty serious and difficult decisions to cut non-essential activity and channel monies into really kind of useful stuff. So I think as a marketeer or a business leader, you need to stand back and look at your entire investment portfolio and say, okay, what can I do without? And what can I not do without? And put the money into what I can't do without. And I think the frills and the nice to haves are gone, and we should be funneling and driving all our investment, all our focus, and all our energy into the absolute things we must do to survive in the future.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today, but this is a great conversation, great feedback for any marketers out there navigating the industry right now. So Matt and Luke, appreciate the time, and thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate you having us.